to show you how entrenched the culture of dissent was here at Goshen College when a new school of thought was articulated by philosopher J. Lawrence Burkholder in his 1958 dissertation. It was all but banned from public debate, literally going underground for 30 years, staying unpublished until 1989, 5 years after President J. Lawrence Burkholder completed his own tenure here at Goshen College as its 11th president. For those of you who think presidents are freest of all to speak their minds in colleges and universities, I would invite you to think again. It was J. Lawrence Burkholder's thesis that called for all Christians, Mennonites and others, including all those people of other faiths trained at Mennonite colleges, to become engaged in the civil, business, political, and institutional establishments of the world. In a bit of provocation, he asked the question, what right has one to prophesy without accepting responsibility for decision-making, management, and accountability? Had he wanted to, Dr. Burkholder could very well have appealed to a precedent of biblical prophets, those who worked within the empires of their day, as well as other biblical characters such as Joseph, Esther, David, Nehemiah, Daniel, and others who were salt and light within the established orders of their times. He did not see such engagement as a negative compromise per se, nor did he see such engagement as a concession to the demands of the nations. So it was that at the height of the Vietnam War, when he and students rightfully protested the war, he also had the United Nations and American flag raised on campus for the first time as an open door for active engagement with the community. Dr. Burkholder saw engagement in the world as a way, and these are his words, as a way of serving Christ by loving the neighbor with greater effectiveness, by helping to change the intellectual and political systems from within the civic and cultural institutions. By contrast, the other Goshen College school of thought cared much less about political effectiveness, even arguing for a certain, and I'm quoting here, John Howard Yoder, a social irresponsibility by Christians separated from the world in order to be witnesses to the world. Dr. Burkholder thought such a clean separation from the world was elusive, if not illusory. President Burkholder felt that Christians and non-Christians alike were to be world citizens, taking responsibility for creating a more flourishing life in the world. He wondered at one point whether the argument for a narrow politics of no or dissent, standing outside the systems of the world as articulated in the Anabaptist vision, wasn't perhaps a sign of arrested development in the Anabaptist movement, frozen in time by martyrdom and elevated to a reconstructed ideal of the past. While the normative Goshen College culture of dissent was being articulated by others from safe and secluded halls of academia in Europe and in Goshen, a youthful J. Lawrence Burkholder was flying huge DC-3 cargo planes of food into China. As the UN representative for relief, he found himself negotiating both between Mao's revolutionary soldiers and Chiang Kai-shek's government forces, and working within the UN policy constraints to get food to starving Chinese caught between these two warring factions at one of the pinnacles of Chinese history, modern history. His philosophy of positive engagement and social responsibility grew out of his governmental work in China, whereas the traditional rendering of the Anabaptist vision had ruled inadmissible participation in civic and national politics. Burkholder believed such participation in many circumstances was a high Christian calling, a worthy vocation. Not only was he invited to give the eulogy, the opening eulogy and prayer at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral ceremony at Harvard University, Dr. Burkholder was in Red Square in Moscow during the failed coup against Boris Yeltsin, was in East Germany when the Berlin Wall fell, in China again shortly after the democracy movement was crushed in Tiananmen Square. And before making my concluding remarks, I would like this morning to introduce to you the father of the other Goshen College School of Thought, Dr. J. Lawrence Burkholder, my president, our president, Dr. Burkholder. Thank you for coming. In conclusion, then, if the traditional Goshen College School of Thought was primarily that of prophetic dissent, deconstruction, critical inquiry, separation from the world as outside observers, all characteristics, by the way, of good critical inquiry in a liberal arts education. The new school of thought adds value to our education by inviting us to become responsible, constructive agents in all the many professions available to us. If one Goshen College School of Thought offers a thesis, the other its antithesis, I long for a synthesis, or at least an accommodation where both schools of thought are given their rightful place here on our campus and in our church. Wouldn't that be a model of true dialogue, the essence of a liberal arts education? The one school of thought will proclaim the radical no to injustice. The other will proclaim the radical yes, we can, and work to create just systems. While the one school of thought argues for selective non-participation, the other will insist on selective participation. If the one school of thought situates us in the middle of salvation history, the other one situates us in the orders of creation. Both are found in the Bible competing with each other. We need both. We need to side with one to the exclusion of the other is to settle for half-truths. To side with either or exclusively is to settle for half-truths. We need some naysayers, no question. Goshen College has been particularly good at nurturing dissenters, prophets, and nonconformists, especially attractive to college students at your stage of life. And we've been good at saying who we are not. But I believe at this time in Goshen's history, we need a lot more radical yay-sayers. We need to create a culture of assent alongside our historic culture of dissent. We need new John Howard Yoders of influence and Jane Howard Yoders of influence who will develop the work of President Burkholder for a whole new generation. We need to say who we are in positive, contagious ways. We need you to become the diplomats helping to negotiate peace at the highest levels of the national and international communities. We need you to become policy wonks and administrators, business gurus, heads of national and international governmental and non-governmental agencies, institutional and political leaders, salt, leaven, and light, who advance the kingdom of Christ, God's great yes, in a world and in the church. Let us join our yes with God's yes, then, in radical engagement to help bring healing and hope to a hurting world. This is no less than our responsibility. I leave us with the question asked of us by the poet Robin O'Brien. She says, in a world full of don't, full of shouldn't and won't, it is easy to fear when that's all that we hear. But what if? What if one day when the naysayers say it is futile, no less, we find courage for yes? Amen.